Hello, my name is Rosa.
My name's Elise.
My name is Camila.
My name is James.
My name is Ezra.
So, our first question is, how will you describe the line when a news article crosses from a factual account to one of an option? Opinion. Yeah. Sorry.
For this one, I have an example of news stations, and how I feel like common news stations are crossing the line, and how they exaggerate things, and like how they make things sound by using their tone and phrasing words differently. It can be like very persuasive and cause unnecessary worry, and yeah, and I feel like that's a good case of factual account over one's opinion, because
Oh well, for me, I got kind of like a case that not actual case, but it was kind of like a debate or discussion within like, I think it was a Congress. There was this person, they were arguing over the abortion laws, and one person was actually like giving facts towards why abortion should be legal, and they were telling the person, oh, like, what happens if like this actually, like, they give a example of a case that happened towards like a girl that got like sexually assaulted, and how she was really young, and how this was gonna affect her life, while the other person was like, well, yeah, but like just giving their opinion, not actually backing it up with facts towards why they believe that abortion should not be. So yeah, that was my example.
One example I had of this is, well, when you see the line being crossed, it's usually when the news stations are looking at, well, favoring more one side, like, of a perspective than another. So you see where they, you see this in a lot, like Fox News, where they favor more of the conservative perspective. So instead of sharing all the like facts to what happened in an incident, they'll share it more where the conservatives will like it more because it's being shared in more of their perspective. And you see this, so I brought up an example of when there was a school shooting that had happened, and they were trying to say that the person who did the shooting was a trans person, and was trying to rile up the media basically with this.
For me, I stated that when you know that the news article is crossing the line, it's when they start like adding their own opinion, their own bias. When they start saying like I believe, that's when I know that they're like not giving like a full out factual article or like news statement. And another like news station that I've heard of, I don't really watch, but I've heard that CNN isn't really reliable in like the information that they give. And just hearing that, I know that I shouldn't be watching CNN because of the misinformation that they spread, and they don't give like facts. I don't have any articles that would demonstrate that, but that's from what I've heard.
So what I focused in more on was how certain articles use dog whistles, or another word that they're called is silent whistles, which is basically them using targeted word choices that a certain political ideology or a certain group hold. So like when the example that I found, or the first thing that I thought of was Fox News, and one of the articles I found was on how there are multiple parents who lost their kids in gun violence who are suing the NRA, and they think that they should get the death penalty for contributing to mass harm, and knowing that they don't have protective gun laws, and they're like paying politicians to make sure that they still have access to everything, so they think they should be held accountable for the part that they play. And Fox News used a certain word when talking about the law when they said NRA digs for a legal fight against woke prosecutor over alleged roadmap of abuse. And so the certain dog whistle they used was woke because in their show, whenever they talk about wokeness or woke people, it's used in a negative connotation. So it's obviously directed towards a certain group of people, and they're targeting a group of people without specifically stating who that group of people are. And I think when news places cross the line is when they use a certain dog whistle where they kind of create like a vague enemy or a vague thing to be threatened by without specifically stating a certain group or a certain thing to be afraid of because they're trying to ramp up anger or scared or fear. To go to our next question, it was more of when you see these kind of things posted on your friends' social media accounts or on people's social media accounts, how do you hold them accountable to what they're sharing?
For this question, I mentioned the coronavirus vaccine and how people were saying that people were dying from the vaccine, and it was spreading around in real life and social media. But I found out that there's actually a 0% chance, there's no chance of dying from the COVID vaccine because there's nothing in it that can kill you. And that it's just misinformation. And according to recent data from the Centers of Disease Control Prevention, and you're more than 3 times more likely to get struck by lightning than to die from the COVID vaccine.
How would you hold somebody accountable for spreading that kind of information?
Delete their report their account report their account and report them for what they're doing because of misinformation.
What if it was one of your friends who posted about it?
Oh, I would definitely try to talk to them in person and be like, "Where'd you get this information?" And try to persuade them to look towards better sources of looking for their news, their information, because some of it's not credible. A lot of it's not credible.
Well, yeah, so for me, kind of will be the same, if someone were to be spreading, false information, and I know, because usually I know that I'm not really, into, learning a lot of stuff, or, unless someone tells me about it, because I don't go and look for it myself. So if I knew that certain information, and I knew that information was not correct, then I would definitely try to just explain to them the actual facts and how it's how it works. But if I don't know anything about it, or I don't know, because most of the time I really don't know, then I don't think I'll say anything, because I'll believe it. But yeah, so it depends.
So James, I also brought up the COVID-19 stuff, but instead of the vaccines, I talked about how they were bringing up a lot. Well, the president and a lot of the Republicans were bringing up it's the China virus and that it's all China's fault for giving us COVID and all that. Well, because of that spread of information, it led to a lot of Asian hate crime being very big, and I feel even when these things happen, there's no one who really holds them accountable. There's people who will say things and go out to try and do something, but it's kind of something that people just wait until it dies out, because no one wants to look up their own information on things on topics that they should be looking for. And it's kind of something where you'll see someone get canceled for it, but even then it doesn't really hold them accountable for the misinformation that they spread. Another thing you see is like fact checking on Twitter. So if someone says something that's wrong, the way that they, well, misinformation, the way that they try to kind of prevent it was doing fact checking. But even that doesn't really, like, it tells the people that, yeah, this might be misinformation, but it only holds them accountable to, like, a certain extent. So I feel like with social media, it's kind of hard to just hold people accountable because it's kind of something that someone says and then it's kind of let go of.
To add on to what Elise was saying, I do feel like people on social media, when they spread misinformation and they're like told and like caught in a way, all they really get is a slap on the wrist. If they're not like an influencer, they don't really get affected. But like all these like just teenagers that are on social media that like say things like posting or adding them to their stories, they could be spreading misinformation about like a classmate and not really get held accountable, or just adding fuel to like fake news that they heard. It's because people, the reason why these like misinformation and fake news are out is because people post things without like searching it up, without being sure, like checking if what they're saying is even true. They just do it for the lols.
Yeah.
And since they aren't, like, the most they can get is in trouble by their parents, but after that it's nothing. So unless you're like an influencer, I feel like you wouldn't really even be held accountable to a certain degree that you probably should be. All you really get is a slap on the wrist.
When we first talked about this, I thought of what I personally saw on social media, which was the people accusing Wayfair of human trafficking because they had like really expensive covers or really expensive things that coincidentally had like the first name or last name of missing people in the United States. And it first started in QAnon, which is not like a good source of information because it's usually people who believe in large conspiracies like JFK is really alive and Elvis Presley is alive and stuff like that. And so they did that to, in this specific case, they did that to this missing girl who went missing for 2 days, but she was just a runaway and she came back to her family. And so her dad was terrified that she ran away again, and she was trapped because he saw her picture on social media next to this pillow on Wayfair. And it caused a lot of panic because they now had to go on social media and say, you know, like, she's found, like, she is here. Wayfair's not doing that. And it first started in QAnon, and then it spread to this large influencer who was sharing this information, who wanted to basically get fame from this. And then what ended up happening is people saw that the social media person posted about it, and it blew up from there because it was just in like small spaces of QAnon, and then she had a larger platform that wasn't just with QAnon supporters, and then it was like the average person was sharing this kind of stuff because I think based on the average person, they thought they were trying to like help. And they thought this was like this big thing, and they wanted to participate in trying to help these kids that were supposedly missing. And for them, I think being held accountable is just telling them to like check their sources and not just trust a Twitter source, right? But for this, I agree with them. For like that social media person, they still had their account afterward. They didn't get any charges or nothing really happened to them. And they got all of that attention and got more followers from it. and the people in QAnon started it knowing that it kind of wasn't real, and they just did it to do it, and so their intention wasn't really like helpful. So I think the best way to do it is what James did. If my friend's posting it, I'm gonna tell them like, hey, you need to check your sources and try to talk them down, and like you can't just trust a Twitter post. Whereas if it was someone like a social media influencer, I do agree with what Camila, Rosa, and Lisa are saying about how it's really hard to get them to be held accountable, because at the end of the day, cancel culture doesn't really exist.
Mm-hmm.
So there's really no way of truly canceling somebody.
Yeah.
Because like they get canceled for like a few months and then
They come back.
They come back.
Yeah.
It's just like a large group of people that just gang up on people, and then I feel like it's just a bunch of people who just hear about it and then like, ooh, let me comment as well,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah,
gets other people into it.
I feel like in reality, through social media, it's really hard to actually get the facts,
Mhm.
even when it's through Google. Because if you know, like Wikipedia, you're able to edit that, and a lot of people are like can spread false rumors through that as well.
Yeah. Even
So
better.
it's always gonna be like, that's the only thing that it's always gonna be a little bit difficult,
Mhm.
because a lot of people are gonna be like, no, yeah, they say that, and then you might actually find actual sources that back that up, but in reality, it might not actually be true.
Yeah.
So it's always gonna be like that, like kind of like that argument of like, yeah.
I think you also have to decipher the intent that people have, because I think most of the time, like if it's the average person posting about it, I think most of the time it's coming from a good intent. They're just misdirecting it, and they're not checking to see if it's real before they're posting it, because I don't think they see the harm of they're posting misinformation. I don't think they see the full spectrum of what that means.
Mm.
Whereas like if it's large celebrities or people that are popular on social media, they're aware of the influence they have on people, and so even though they might think it's real, they still have that obligation because they're sharing it to a large group of people. Whereas like if someone like my friend, like they only have like 100 or so followers, usually you just skip past the story and you don't even read it. So they're being held accountable is really just like a talk of like, hey, you have some influence of like how the way your friends think, you should probably stop. Whereas social media, like people in social media have a larger obligation because they know that people are going to watch their content on a mass scale, and it's always going to be there no matter what, and people will believe it.
To add on to what you were saying, I do agree with everything that you were saying, and it got me thinking like what we could do about this. And I was thinking maybe, I don't know, maybe not at schools or maybe, but like people, or like more so like young students, younger like tweens, teens, should be like in a way taught that they shouldn't trust everything that they see on social media. But I feel like even not just them, also grown adults just be seeing something and like instantly believe it, and like they don't really look into like the matter. But I don't know, I just feel like there should be, I don't know if a class or something, but like something that helps people become more aware that not everything online is true, and that they should like do more research before they post anything, and just help not spread misinformation.
Anything else to add? No? Okay. Well,
Good
thank you.
discussion, yay.